What's our seat number?
Hello, and welcome back to What's Our Seat Number with me, Johnny Gross.
And me, Simon Gross.
I'm glad we got through that this time. We are talking about No Time to Die, the latest James Bond movie in the Indiana Jones universe, produced by Marvel and directed by Zack Snyder.
That was brilliant. Did you just come up with that on
I'm
the spot?
riffing.
That
I did not write that down.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Okay, so this is part 2 of our discussion. So where were we?
We were talking, I think we just finished talking about the Ebola virus stealing
Yeah,
thing.
you reminded me of the Mitchell and Webb sketch.
Brilliant.
In fact, there's a lot of Mitchell and Webb sketches that No Time to Die seems to bring to mind.
Well, that was actually what you said at the end of the last episode, was you think that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was maybe flexing her sitcom-y kind of dialogue muscles, and I think that kind of British sitcom-y sketch type stuff just has very little place in a Bond movie, and so the whole Ebola, I've only got to put Ebola in his soup, is like, oh, I didn't laugh and no one else in the theatre did.
No, but when I think of Hugh Dennis, I think of My Hero, I think of Mock the Week.
Right, yeah.
Or
Janet.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
So what's next after that scene? We got Bond vacationing in Jamaica. Felix and this new guy, Logan Ash, come and visit him and take him out to a club, which is new. But they have this nice rapport going on. You got Felix and Bond hanging out for the first time. We've never actually really seen that.
They're playing a game.
And he's trying to convince him to come on a mission, basically. Come back into the fold. And the CIA and MI6 are at odds because we find out that this virus was engineered by M.
I really want to talk about my thoughts on this. But go on, no.
That's why we're here.
No, it's like I feel like delving into this needs to happen after we talk about the ending. Because I want to talk about what does happen and then what I think should have happened.
Fine. So Bond meets up with Nomi, who was a source of extreme
controversy.
Controversy? I was going to say controversy.
You're not American.
I'm not American, no. I don't think I would have gotten quite as angry as most people have, especially since I knew from the get-go that she wasn't playing James Bond or taking over from James Bond, that he was on leave or left.
He left,
actually,
and they replaced him.
And they replaced him with another agent whom they allocated the number 007 to.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a problem with that at all. And I also think that she was incredible in the role. She's a very good actress.
Fantastic.
And kicked fucking ass.
She was fantastic. And there's something that, on this note, Daniel Craig said, I don't think that there should be a female James Bond. I think that, there should just be better roles for women.
Right.
And then what I was seeing was, I had seen the original article of what that they quoted him. And then I was seeing all these clickbait things all over Facebook and on, different places where they said, Daniel Craig doesn't think Bond should be a woman, or Daniel Craig thinks a woman can't be Bond. There are ways to do it where you don't need to take an established character and make it female. Because, and I was talking about Doctor Who on this front, is the idea that when they made the last few seasons of Peter Capaldi's run, they were already peppering the idea that Time Lords can switch genders, which was fine. And then the whole thing with the Master being a woman, I thought that
soda.
This time, no splashback. So I felt like that. That whole thing, and then when they changed the Doctor into a woman, was not a natural progression of the character, but the BBC's need to show, oh, please, God, diversity. Believe us that we are progressive. And I don't think that is the way to go about it. I think that there are problems with the characterization of women in movies and games, in media in general, and I think that the way to do it is to just write better characters and have, the characterization. Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
And I think that with there's I'm going to bring it up again, but Bloodstone, the Bond game,
Right.
Joss Stone, who plays the Bond girl, as it were,
Right.
says to him, "Oh, I think it's better if you drive because, I'm not very good at driving." And that's a moment that makes you go, "Oh." And also, like, he says, "Move over, let me drive." And you're half expecting her to go, "Oh, thank goodness, my delicate female fingers couldn't possibly hold the wheel anymore." Like, the characterization of that character makes it sound like whoever wrote this was very male. And doesn't understand,
which is why also, like, aside from the obvious sitcom influences and whatnot, I thought it was a very good idea to bring in Phoebe
absolutely.
Waller-Bridge
She's
to
a
punch up
fantastic
the
writer.
women. Yeah,
and I think it only helped with the females, female
Paloma
characters.
specifically.
Paloma was fantastic, and we'll get to that. But I really think that. I'm just getting stuck on this because I think that the discussion around whether or not Bond should be a woman, not be a woman, all that stuff, it doesn't have to be. And someone said to me, like a friend of mine said to me, "I think that you're just a bit of a chauvinist when it comes to this particular subject."
Not at
right?
all.
And I think. But there's nothing chauvinistic particularly. If the definition of being chauvinist is, I think that women should have empowering roles, women should write for female roles. I think that there should be, better characterization for women and better representation, and that the men and the women should have an equal footing when it comes to the action that they're taking and the agency that they have. And that the agency is not based on, I'm doing it for this man, right?
Right.
Or I'm doing it because this man has taken me by the hand and is running down a corridor with me now because I can't run by myself, right? Then yes, I'm a chauvinist. Like,
which is part of the problem with Madeline Swan as well.
Exactly.
She exists purely.
She exists to motivate him and to drive his and that's a problem. It's
another reason why she's a very weak Bond girl because. It's supposed to be all punched up for the female roles and whatnot. And I feel like she does get a lot of very good acting moments, but at the same time, she exists purely for him.
Yeah.
In the movie, she doesn't exist independently of him. I don't know. It didn't.
It's a very tricky subject.
It's a very tricky subject. It's also a very tricky thing to write.
Yeah.
But the thing with Doctor Who, and the reason why we keep coming back to this is mainly because it's
another series that changes
60-year-old series, I should say, that the actors keep changing. There's more of a precedent because they actually came up with a reason why he changes as opposed to Bond. I didn't stop watching Doctor Who because of Jodie Whittaker. I think that she's great.
I also think she's great.
I stopped watching Doctor Who because of the writing, and I stopped watching Doctor Who because of the companions. I thought that they were all fairly weak, and the stories weren't good, and I just got bored.
There is a 2-parter with the new master,
right,
who is male. Mm-hmm. And their dynamic is electrifying. And it feels like Doctor Who. So it proves what you just said about how... Like, I watched the first season of Jodie Whittaker and I was not impressed.
Right.
But then
I didn't even know that they continued on.
I heard that there was... the Master appears in the second season and that he was also he was an actor who had appeared in the Dracula 3-parter. Mm-hmm. The Stephen Moffat one.
Right.
And Mark Gatiss as well? Gatiss?
Yeah. I believe so.
I think they wrote that together.
Yeah.
And, and so I was intrigued by it. So I watched this 2-parter and I was like, this feels like Doctor Who. So it's possible to do it. It just means that you have to understand what makes these character dynamics work.
Right.
And so, I don't think that them changing, the Doctor to a woman was a bad move per se. I think it's an unnecessary one. But it's a little bit easier because the DNA changes and every cell in her body changes. But here you are talking about a grounded, more realistic thing. And it just feels weird to me to talk about changing James Bond into a woman.
But so that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what I was talking about before about the floating timeline, is that there was never any need to explain it before.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of an aesthetic change when GoldenEye came along, but they still referred to the past Bond movies, and it was still part of that quote unquote continuity. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. The issue is that now people keep talking about continuing on in the Craig universe with a new character playing James Bond, which is a code name.
No, they should just close off the Craig universe.
Exactly.
And
they need to
start
hard
a
reset.
new one. Like exactly what they're doing with the Batman now. Just like reset it. It can be... I don't think they need to do another origin. I think that they can do exactly what... And forgive me again. You know, I'm not going to... Okay. I am a 3D artist and a video game lover. I've played video games since very, very early on. And video game storytelling has become an example of just storytelling and how it can be very effective and emotional. And so I am not going to apologize anymore on these podcasts for harking back to video games. The Spider-Man game...
Yes.
The Spider-Man game that came out on PS4 in 2018, they didn't do an origin story. They said everybody knows who Spider-Man is. This game takes place 8 years into his Spider-Man career. Right. He's no longer a teenager. He's been doing this for 8 years and he has experience. And what he's going to face are just going to be larger stakes. So there's no reason to go back to before he was a 00, and they're making a Bond game now. IO Interactive, who make the Hitman series, are making a Bond game, and they said it's going to be sort of Casino Royale, like it's an origin story. I'm really interested to see how they do it and what their take is, because it could be really good. But like, I don't think it's necessary to keep doing that. I think that they can go to a later. It can be exactly like it was in the old movies, but it could be a new continuity and with its own arc, and they can plan the arc this time.
Well, they don't even have to do an arc.
They don't. It can all be standalone stories, and we'll be happy. And you bet your ass we're going to go see it.
Right. We'll go see it regardless. But the thing about Daniel Craig's Bond was that at the end of Casino Royale, he comes up the stairs and he holds up the rifle and he says, "Name's Bond, James Bond," and you think, okay, now he's sort of like amassed all of these character traits and the suit and the all that kind of stuff. And I thought that they were gonna not necessarily connect. I didn't want them to do a prequel to Dr. No, okay? I didn't expect them to connect Daniel Craig's Bond to Sean Connery's Bond. What I thought was that they were going to say, okay, we rebooted, we got a new style, we got a new actor, we got a new idea of how to tackle these movies, and it's just going to continue on as if it's the Bond that you know and love from the previous continuity. That was my thought, but obviously now they've had to close it off and start again. So
anyway,
let's get back to Nomi. So
brilliant. I thought
love
she was
that
brilliant.
dialogue scene. I think that as we just talked about, what may be the worst of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's input. This is, I think, the best of her input.
Absolutely.
And I can't tell you exactly who wrote what, but I have an idea. So she sort of comes into his home under false pretenses. She gives him a lift back. Need a ride.
Says, "Is this the bedroom?"
Yeah, all that stuff. And then she takes off her hair and starts talking with a British accent. And you realize, which is something that that we were talking about earlier in terms of like his not being able to cotton on to Vesper.
Yeah.
That he knows from the get-go that she is one of his. That she's a 00. Mm-hmm. He even says to her, "You a 00?" She says 2 years. Oh, for fuck's sake, 2 years. Do you know how long I had to do it? All that stuff. And then she says, "Mr. Bond," and he says, "It's Commander, and you know it." And
brilliant. I love that moment. It's Commander, and you know it. It gave me shivers when he said that because I'm like, this guy is a ranking official in the Navy,
right?
And you should speak to him with some fucking respect.
Yeah, 2 years, you young whippersnapper. And
that the coldness with which he says it is very... So I was like, whoa, right? And then it started getting me on a thing where I was like, I want to now look for all the different places where he's referenced as Commander, because I want to know if it's used for the same kind of effect. Like, do they use it, Commander Bond?
So from my memory...
Commander. GoldenEye, right?
Yeah, so there's one in GoldenEye. He says it, actually.
Yeah.
But there's a few references. He's in the uniform in You Only Live Twice. He's in the uniform in Spy Who Loved Me. He's in the uniform in Tomorrow Never Dies. I think that's it.
Here, listen to this. You're about to see something interesting, Johnny.
Yeah.
What is it that Xenia Onatopp says to him in GoldenEye that makes him go, Commander?
And what rank do you hold with the motor vehicles department, Mr. Bond? Yeah.
That is brilliant.
What?
First of all, the way that you can remember that and dive into it, but you are listening to exactly what makes Johnny the perfect person to talk about James Bond for 4 hours. He breathes these movies. Anyway, I'm talking to you, not to the audience.
Right.
So what I wanted to say about that is that the use of him just, immediately he's telling her. He's basically telling her that she's talking to
a superior.
Right. I really like their back and forth, and I also think that their progression throughout the movie, the progression of their relationship to mutual respect, is extremely believable. It's one of the relationships in the movie that I find to be the most believable.
Right.
And I mean, there are other relationships that I think are pretty good and that work really well. Felix, Tanner, Moneypenny, Q. I do feel like because they've had previous movies together and whatnot, so there is a rapport and that they do speak to each other like colleagues and friends almost, which, I think is also like a nice departure for, Daniel Craig's movies where, the Moneypenny in early movies and also in GoldenEye in the Pierce Brosnan, almost said his name wrong.
Blas Prestoff.
Yeah.
Should we explain that?
Yeah, you should explain that.
I should explain that?
I'm just very lazy when it comes to name. When I was a kid, I forgot that, I don't know, his name was Pierce Brosnan. I called him Blas Prestoff and Johnny thought it was very funny and latched onto it.
It's never gotten old.
No.
Also, we were talking about our dad last night.
Yeah.
And how he saw the Drew Carey show on TV.
He
called him Barry Carew.
Anyway, so that's like an illness in my family too. Johnny didn't get skipped a generation, but like he did that. I also think with what is wrong with me? His name's Calvin Dyson.
Yes.
And I sent you a voice message and I almost said Dyson Carver for some reason. And I don't know why. I don't know why my brain does that. Anyway, the point is, in Pierce Brosnan's era, Moneypenny was also like...
Calcium Darwin?
I had moved on. I had moved past it and regained my thread. Why? Right. So in those movies also, she was like the secretary who he flirts with, and she wants him, and she can't have him, and he wants her, and he's like, he could take her any moment, but he won't, and all that, And I really like the fact that that the supporting team, that Q and Tanner and M even and also Moneypenny are. Throughout, they are useful. They give him information. They have a presence.
I dispute the portrayal of the new Moneypenny. To be honest, I don't think it's that progressive. Because in Skyfall, she is all action. Like she knocks off her wing mirror. Wasn't using that one either. She's very reckless. She's a female Bond. All that stuff. And then she shoots Bond, and she gets desked because she's shit. And then she becomes a fucking secretary. She doesn't wear a dress at the beginning of the movie. And then at the end of the movie, she's wearing something that looks very similar to Lois Maxwell's dress. But
she isn't wearing dresses in the other two. She isn't wearing dresses in Spectre and in No Time to Die. So they cut that shit out immediately. But the other thing is that in the hearing... scene, she is protecting the ministers. She picks up a gun and she starts protecting the ministers. And so she still has that. Okay. Can we just put a pin in this?
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Because we are going to come back to it. We've got a whole mythos that we want to bring up.
But the point is that in Spectre and in No Time to Die, she's not given...
Do you like the hooks that we keep on throwing in there to keep people...
She's not given very much to do. And I don't think that she is as much of a progression as people think she is.
I don't think that... No, I'm just saying that compared to what was, the fact that she has a voice and the fact that she is more involved. You and I think, and we'll talk about this later, but you and I think that she should have had an even bigger role, right? And we have plans for what we would have done with it if we could have,
Well, let's put a pin in that.
But I am later.
Okay. All right,
later, General.
Later, General. Yes.
So I do think that the fact that the team is bantery and that we were the way we got to this, we were talking about 007, talking to 007. And their relationship progressing to mutual respect. And then I said that the other characters also had like a really interesting sort of, back and forth with him. I do think, however, that they were underutilized, and we'll put a pin in that.
Right. Okay.
Right. I want to actually talk a little bit about reintroducing Blofeld in this movie.
Okay. But 1 second. The thing about the commander line.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were.
Right. The characterization, you see Bond let his hair down, and I look, to be honest, there's a trend going on in cinema right now in these big blockbuster franchises that for whatever reason they have to keep killing off our icons.
Yeah.
And the first time it was like, oh my God, how brave and how daring, and now it's just kind of like, yep, there goes another one.
When Han Solo. Went.
Yeah.
It was not only heartbreaking, but also it felt right. Like there was a symmetry.
But it started a
reaction. Yeah, it started a trend that I don't necessarily think it started there. I think that there have been
Logan as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think
spoilers for Logan, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
Spoilers for everything.
Yeah.
This is a spoiler cast.
Yes.
I do feel that I'm warming over the last. I've had the weekend to sort of digest what happened in No Time to Die. I'm warming to the idea that Bond can be killed. My problem was with the reason I'm warming to it is because it's happened, right? It's past and it's film history,
but it's
and
fine.
You and I can't change that.
Absolutely.
But my problem was with how it happened, how it was led to, and what they really could have done.
Right.
Put a pin in it.
To Okay, so what I want to say about that is that Bond. Okay, a lot of people are going to think Bond shouldn't die. You should never see Bond in that kind of vulnerable position because he is a fantasy.
Because he always makes it out.
Right, he always makes it out. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about him scratching his balls and cleaning his teeth in the shower and sort of like getting pissed in the pub and all that kind of stuff. Now, there is precedent for that because he's 5 years out of the service and whatever. But then when you see him snap to it, when he's talking to Nomi in his room, and then suddenly you get the old Bond back, and he says, "I'm a commander, and you know it," right? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of that scene. Is that I think that if they would have kept on with that and allowed him to still be Bond at certain points of the movie, while allowing him to deviate from that, then I would have accepted it a lot more.
Yeah.
But they deviated too much and too often.
Yeah.
And the way also what we were talking about in the previous podcast, that he was the way that he reacts during action scenes and
doddering,
like facial expressions. Compare that to that gag that you hated in Spectre when he slides down the crumbling building, lands on the couch, and he's holding the.
That's not the gag that I hate in Spectre. I'm fine with that.
I heard you huff when we were watching it in the cinema, but the way
I don't deny it. But my problem with Spectre was the entire car chase, if you want to call it a car chase.
Oh no!
And then exactly, and then he ejector seats out of the car, and then he lands, and then he goes, "Evening," in this very sort of like
Roger
Moore. I meant Roger Moore.
So what I'm saying is,
upset me.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that he lands on the couch, and he's got like a kind of that kind of facial expression where he's just like tosses away he's got like, what is it, like a light
he's got
fitting?
A lamp fitting that he was holding on to before he slid down the building,
right? And then he tosses it away with some contempt, straightens himself out, leaves the entrance of the courtyard, and he's standing staring at Skiara with those like snake eyes. You know that he's like,
I'm here to kill you. Yeah,
I'm stalking you. I'm an assassin, and you're dead.
Yeah.
And that's Bond.
Yeah.
You know, showing that kind of like whoa kind of thing. You know that.
What if I don't wobble?
Yeah. You know that like he's Bond doesn't scream when he grabs the cable and sort of dives off the side of the bridge.
Like
because
he dives off a fucking bridge and he does it while looking really cool. Now there's nothing wrong with him getting hurt and there's nothing wrong with him getting covered in dust and dirt and whatever. But he needs to look like his adrenaline has just been kicked into overdrive. He needs to look like he's ready to get going. He needs to look like, now I'm in kill mode. Because he's an assassin. Like I feel like if you were to lean into the idea that Bond has been out of the service for 5 years and he's scratching his balls and he's lost some decorum and whatever, I'm fine with that. But you have to start introducing those elements of, but he's been this thing for years and years and years, and that doesn't just go away, right? And so I do feel like, although he may not be as sharp as he was, that when he gets, blown away from a grave, he'd be shocked and he'd be like, his ears are ringing and whatever, but then he'd like snap out of it.
He'd be like,
angry.
Motherfucker.
There's that moment where in Casino Royale when he leaps off of bits of the building and then he lands in a metal pipe or something and he bounces off it and he just kind of goes like like an animal, right? Yeah. And I remember watching it and I remember thinking, this guy's a fucking beast. He can rip people to pieces, and that is what for me is like missing. I feel like if you are there is nothing wrong with being a suave, cocky spy. But it's a ruse to get what he wants. It's to get him into to get him into that situation where he can carry out his mission. He's an assassin. He's there to kill people, so he does have to have some of that decorum. And yeah, so we talked about this already in the first part.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the Cuba sequence. He's taking part in this operation for Felix at odds with MI6. And he goes into to this big Spectre gathering. And he meets Paloma, who's...
fantastic.
Yeah. She's not sultry and, manipulative or damsel in distress.
She's not there to have sex with Bond.
Right, and she's not there to have sex with Bond. And that's another thing. There's this little moment where, she wants him to take his clothes off, and he's like, well, shouldn't we get to know each other first?
And she's like, oh, no.
No, I want you to put a tuxedo on because you look like a...
homeless person.
Yeah. So anyway, Daniel Craig looking like a homeless person still looks like a
Daniel Craig.
Yeah,
wearing a suit.
Indeed.
Anyway,
yeah. So she gets a really nice scene here, but she's underused.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm saying anything particularly new here, but at the end of it, it's kind of like it was really nice working with you. It was nice working with you too. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then she never comes back again. She's not referred to again. She's like literally in that scene, and that's it.
There's very little about that. It's very contained and it's very like self-contained. I mean,
yeah. It could have been taken out.
It could have been taken out. You'd have exactly the same movie.
I mean, aside from the fact that Safin is
Spectre thing,
he's
killed
targeting
all the Spectre.
Yeah, that all seems a little bit weird to me. I didn't love it.
It felt very convenient, and listen,
I did like the bionic eye though.
You did?
I did. I did, and I know because that bit in Spectre where he's talking to them in the computer room.
Yeah.
And then everybody, like all the computers go off and everybody gets up and, they're all shadowy and they start like staring at him.
Yeah.
I like that kind of thing. I think it's really, really creepy. Sort of invasion of the the invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing. And there's a similar kind of sequence in this where, suddenly everybody at the party turns around and starts looking at him. And,
which is great.
Yeah.
The bionic eye I wasn't a fan of.
You weren't a fan of.
But
but he's always watching. That was the...
yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like I like the fact that they put in those moments of, like, it's the same thing in Spectre as well, where he goes, "Welcome, James," and he says, "What took you so long?" And he looks directly at them. He doesn't have to look around the room. He knows exactly where he is, right?
Oh, one sec. Where are you? All right.
Go on, raise your hand.
There you
Give
are.
a bit of an A,
Ooh.
so we know where you are. And so there's none of that.
Yeah.
And that is strong. There are some very strong things, but it's just like the bionic eye didn't work for me. I was like, why are they giving this so much screen time, like so much weight? Like why is that? It adds to the things that feel cartoony for me, and it takes me out of it.
Right.
Because, and it goes back to the promise, right? What I was saying in the last episode, I think, about, the promise of what this Bond is in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and then breaking that promise in Skyfall, and then they keep on flitting back and forth between that promise and breaking that promise. And it just feels very all over the place and messy to me, and it just highlights in this movie, and this movie just highlights it all the more, the indecisiveness of the production team.
Right.
That they can't decide whether they're going all in on this idea for Bond, or they're kind of backtracking because people are complaining there aren't enough gadgets. Right? In case you didn't know, I don't like the whole gadgets thing.
Right.
Listen to the last episode. So I thought that she was great, and then, the whole thing with all of Spectre being killed off.
But also he's kind of, I mean, he's not, I wouldn't call him inept, but he's behaving in a very different way than he would normally behave. I'm not going to beat this over the head.
He's not active in the scene. He's reactive.
Right.
Which is not a bad thing if he reacts smartly, but it just feels like he's, again, bumbling through the scene. Like, and again, Paloma has some fantastic moments, and we saw it in the trailer where she, the shot from above, and it's, I think, very iconic, where, she brings a guy down, she takes his gun, she shoots two other guys on the floor, and nothing's falling out of her dress, like, it's fantastic.
Right.
I have a problem with the fact that he's not doing anything cool, and they didn't go like back to back and start like, shooting people. Not that necessarily would have been any better, but like I think that there could have been a working together element that is
more of a synergy like there was in the end of the movie,
because it really worked at the end with 007 and 007.
Right.
Which is 0014, which is 014. Oh, fuck it. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about next? We talked about Paloma, we talked about Cuba. Awesome scene. And then we have the scene on the boat with Felix and Logan Ash. You want to talk a little bit about Logan Ash?
I do. I think that he was quite a good villain. Like, I think the fact that Bond says, he smiles too much. It was a little obvious that there was going to be a double cross there, or that, for me, I thought.
It's Billy Magnuson, who played the equivalent of Prince Ahmed in the live-action version of Aladdin.
All right.
It's like a sort of he's a German prince or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Listen, it was. I think that his I don't know, maybe his casting was. Maybe it was that was the point of it, was that he should be like a pretty boy.
I think he's pretty much he's pretty much the way Fleming describes Leiter in the books.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if that has any significance.
No, I was just thinking that he was a bit of a, like, he was an interesting villain just because of the impact that he has on the movie. Right. And this kind of segues nicely into a topic that you brought up the other day that I've never really thought about in Bond movies. And you were saying, who's the victim in this movie?
Right.
And I'd like you to expand on...
the sacrificial lamb.
I want you to expand on that, because I'm really interested, because sometimes you will shine a light on a Bond trope, and I'll be like, oh, fuck. Like the Commander thing, right? Like that made me go... I knew about it, but then I started thinking about, are there other times when he wants to be called Commander, or other people use that term out of respect, and I was like, oh shit, that just set me going on a... So I'm just interested. Can you explain what the victim is? You call it the victim. That's the title of
the sacrificial lamb. Yeah. So basically, it's a trope that began with Dr. No. I believe it's in the book as well. It is in the book actually because I remember. But Quarrel gets burned to death by the quote unquote dragon tank thing.
Yeah.
And then in From Russia with Love, it's Karen Bay, and in Goldfinger it's Tilly Masterson.
Yeah.
And Jill Masterson. That's a double sacrificial lamb right there. Goldfinger had an itchy trigger finger. You had Paula Kaplan in Thunderball. You know, there's
License to Kill.
License to Kill. But there isn't really a sacrificial lamb in License to Kill. It's Felix is injured but isn't killed.
Della!
Oh, Della, right. So Della dies in the first act.
She does, but he thought that she was sweet and that she was pure and she didn't deserve it, and also that Felix didn't deserve what happened. Not just that he had his leg eaten by a shark, but that he lost her. Right. And so that felt very powerful to me when I was watching it, like that he was motivated not just by what happened to Felix, but the lighter that she gave him. Or that they gave him, but like she gives it to him, doesn't she?
The lighter. Does
she give him the lighter in the movie?
They both do. It's a gift from the both of them.
But doesn't she hand it to him? I remember. I just remember feeling that like she strikes a nerve with her. Also, because you did the impression of he was married once. Which I thought was
1 second. He was married once. But it was a long time ago.
See, now it sounds like how it sounded like in the movie, but in the message that you sent me, you go, "He was married once."
Was married once.
Sounded like Peter Griffin. Anyway, so where she says to him, catch the bouquet, and he goes, "No," and then she throws it at him anyway, or whatever it is, the garter belt.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so excuse me, that was me clearing my throat right into the microphone. It actually helped quite a lot, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so the sacrificial lamb in this movie is in fact Felix himself.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I didn't look at it that way when I was watching the film. I thought about it afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was going to be Paloma, or maybe Madeline Swan.
You were hoping it was going to be Madeline Swan.
I wasn't hoping it was going to be Madeline Swan, but I thought that if she had been killed, then it would have set him on a rage-fueled revenge mission.
Yeah.
That might have ended his tenure quite with a bang, I think. But
his tenure ended with a bang anyway.
Yeah, but I'm a bang that I would have accepted a little bit more readily. I don't know, but yeah, it's so we lose Felix, which and it's a shame because he's got very limited screen time. His screen time in Casino Royale is very well used.
Yeah.
And in Quantum of Solace, he's on the other side for most of it.
Yeah.
However unwillingly. And then the next time we see him is in No Time to Die, so they don't really have a lot of time to build their relationship.
Yeah.
Which is why those opening scenes of them in the pub and everything are quite
great.
Yeah. But it also sets up both Billy Magnuson as Logan Ash and the scientist Obruchev as being villains.
Yeah.
And also the explosion with the biplane flying away from that you see in the trailer.
Yeah.
That's actually another thing I wanted to mention. A lot of the big stunts you do see in the trailer. There was not a lot that surprised me, which is a shame.
Yeah. There was they still haven't quite hit the heights of that tanker that you like so much. The two tankers and him rolling between them.
Oh, in Casino Royale.
Yeah.
I love that because in the you see that in the trailer. But in the context of the film, it always makes my balls jump up into my body a little bit.
I know.
Yeah. It's like every time I watch it, I go, because it's so damn close and it looks like a real stunt. And I think it is a real stunt, but I'm not sure if maybe they digitally
made it a little bit closer than it really was.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
You know the thing from Baby Driver where he does like a drift down an alleyway.
Yeah,
so
and sort of turns around and
there's like a VFX artist react video where they talk about how what they did was, they just had the driver, whoever it was, drift down the street, and then they put some obstacles a little closer to make it look like he just barely. So that could be it, but I really want to believe that was a just very well choreographed and timed stunt.
Right.
I really want to believe that, because I think that they could have done it, and I think that but anyway, the thing, I wasn't upset about Felix's death. In fact, I was expecting that they push the boundaries a little bit with the characters and the things that they're going to do with them, and not be afraid to kill people off, because I did feel like that was what they were going to do.
That was the thing that pissed me off so much, was that like we saw M die in Skyfall.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, because M is a constant, and also that incarnation of M has been a constant since GoldenEye.
But has it?
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm talking about Judi Dench.
You know what I'm talking about, right? But you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the continuity.
Christ, I missed the Cold War.
Right. And it's posited that maybe she is a different character, or maybe she just, multiverse traveled into Craig's tenure, whatever it is. I don't need it explained. I don't care.
Again, what is everyone's obsession with needing things to be explained like that?
I think that Judi Dench is fucking brilliant, and I think she raises everybody's game. So Judi Dench bites it at the end of Skyfall, which is a big deal. And probably not something that people were expecting them to do. She could have just stepped down and then Mallory take over, etc., etc., etc. So I wasn't particularly bothered by that, because you can do that kind of thing. You can do things with the characters around Bond.
Yeah.
And I'm absolutely fine with it. They killed off Leiter. It's a good motivation for him, and it's it's a chance for him to emote, to react to what's going on around him, etc., etc. Which is, so I mean that to me is fine. It's the other thing that I don't love.
No, listen, I mean, I think also that now that they've done what they've done with the ending, in future Bond incarnations, we're gonna have
a new Leiter, probably.
No, I'm saying no, I don't mean about Leiter. I mean about Bond.
Right.
The implication is that in future movies, he could just be killed, and they'll continue it with like the other characters taking revenge or trying to solve what happened to it. I feel like it's no longer going to necessarily revolve around him, that he's now expendable as a character, which, while very brave, is not right. Anyway, but I've jumped ahead. I didn't mind the whole Felix thing. It didn't need to be with the shark either, which is fine. But I don't know, it didn't impact me. I didn't feel anything about it. I was like, all right, okay, and it didn't feel interesting.
Okay. So Felix is gone. Let's talk about the villain.
Okay.
So you wanted to talk about Blofeld.
I think it's just a good place to talk about villains in general. I think that Safin and Blofeld and Logan are completely useless in this movie. I mean, Logan served to kill off Leiter.
Right.
And I thought that the way that he was dispatched was actually pretty good.
The callback to For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. But I didn't find him compelling in any way as a character.
Yeah, not really.
Not that he needs to be. Look, even Urumov, who gets dispatched quite quickly in the movie, like halfway through or something. He in GoldenEye, I mean.
Yeah.
He's at least, he's got some color to him. There's something very interesting about him. He, kills all of is it Serenaya?
Serenaya, yeah.
Serenaya. He kills all of the people there, and he has like these really interesting. He has interesting moments, and I just didn't feel that any of them were particularly. I felt that the Blofeld was a connective line between the last movie and this movie, and that his appearance in this movie was really pointless.
Yeah. I wasn't. I mean, they wanted to do something. I think akin to Hannibal Lecter.
Right,
or
that's what they wanted to do, but it did not come across like that at all.
I'll tell you what it is. I think that that Christoph Waltz is a great actor.
Yes.
Okay, I loved him.
And he can be very menacing.
Yeah, he can be very menacing. I loved him in Inglourious Bastards. The thing about Inglourious Bastards and Hans Landa is that the Nazi uniform and the very fact that he is a Nazi and his jovial demeanor are fantastic juxtapositions and make it all the more frightening. Whereas Blofeld, you never really see him do anything particularly dastardly. He's all like, chipper all the time.
He's very, again, I keep saying the word, but
you don't see him get his hands dirty.
He's very cartoony.
Yeah.
And it's, there's something about the exchange between them in the glass booth, right? Where he's
also Bond loses his. It's
that's
another
what I'm
example
about. I was just
of.
Gonna say that.
Yeah, it's another example of Bond's characterization being extremely off.
He starts begging him for information. He's like, "Please tell me," and it's like, "What?" And then he starts shouting at Tanner, and like he has no cool, he has no calm, and also like the fact that Blofeld tells him that Madeleine Swann was not really working for him. It serves just to bring Bond back to her, and it's like, really, why would I believe you now? Like, I don't understand why. Oh, really? Oh, so that's all I needed to hear. Now that you've said it, Blofeld, I believe you.
That's another thing. I feel like Bond kind of believes everything that the bad guys tell him,
and not
like for example Mathis, and like I just feel like he's a little bit gullible.
Yeah, like
and I feel like it rams that point home in No Time to Die as well, and then Blofeld does his me, the author of all your pain. Mm-hmm. He does that whole thing again, and it's just like, we get it. You're a good writer. Well done.
No, but books. it's we get it. You are the connective tissue that hasn't really shown its face anywhere, right? And I think that, and we'll put a pin in it, but I think that Blofeld is as an idea, a Moriarty and an antagonist to, because I don't like the word villain anymore. I like the word antagonist. I like the, how do you say this? Antithesis?
And
antithesis?
And yeah, okay.
The opposite antithesis of what Bond is trying to do. Just like Moriarty is the antithesis.
But I want my antagonists to be frightening.
Right, and that's
I
what
want
I was
them to feel like a threat.
Safin was terrifying in the opening sequence.
In the opening sequence with that wonderful porcelain mask that's so iconic.
But
it's like immediately iconic.
Again. It's used to tell Madeleine Swann who he is, but what is the mask and why was he wearing it and what significance did it have?
I wish he would have worn it in the present day sequences and revealed himself in the final confrontation between the like Bond, and he and Bond have a conversation. The idea is that he wants to hide his scars. And again, there's another bone of contention here about the bad guys being disfigured. That people are calling for that to stop, because anybody that has any kind of disfigurement is, considered to be or disability. They're considered to be grotesque because that's what they've been conditioned to believe by Hollywood.
I understand what they're saying when they say that.
So do I.
But the fact is that you're talking about, if we give someone a disfigurement, which is a motivator for why they are the way they are. For example, as far as I understood it in the movie, Safin, his entire family had been poisoned, and that the scarring was the effects of whatever this poison was, whatever it did. It was gas or something, I'm not sure. And he is motivated by revenge. He's motivated by this thing that happened to him. He's fucked up, and it's not about people who are disfigured are bad. It's that this guy is bad, and he happens to have a disfigurement which triggered his current life path, which I think is,
The thing is that Bond in the books had a scar on his face.
That's true.
Right. And I also wish that at the end of Casino Royale, Mr. White would have marked him on the hand like he does in the book. That he's sort of like, it's almost like a branding.
Yeah.
You know, that you're a spy, and and you're always going to be identified as a spy. And I think by the by the next book, Live and Let Die, he's had a skin graft to hide that, but he wants revenge and all that kind of stuff.
And then he has his finger chopped off in that book.
Yeah, he has the tip of his finger chopped off. Yeah, it's a difficult subject. Like, what is the solution to that? Do you stop making villains look scary?
Well, I think that it comes back to what you said, which is that it's not about how they look; it's that they should behave in a way that is scary.
Yeah, so this brings me back to what I was saying before. Is that, like, for example, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3.
Brilliant example.
Okay,
yeah.
So he's threatening Julia, who is Ethan Hunt's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And that is enough that is enough stakes.
Yeah.
Okay. He's steak.
It's how he.
I'm hungry.
It's how he threatens her as well.
Right.
Because
so he's extremely menacing. He's also you get the feeling that he's maybe got some kind of degree in psychology or something like that. He knows how to manipulate, and he knows how to talk to somebody. In order to like charm them or to get information out of them or to scare them or whatever it is. You get the feeling that he's a well-rounded character and that he's somebody to be reckoned with. Hugh Laurie in The Night Manager, same thing.
Also.
Or Alec Baldwin in The Cooler. Okay?
You are like firing off some really good examples.
Yeah, but these are examples of heavies who are heavy.
Yeah.
And I think that these people should be a match for Bond. They shouldn't be caricatures of somebody that just give them a scar and a white cat and an Eastern European accent and you're away to the races. Like I don't believe that that's good enough anymore. I think that if they want to concentrate their efforts into improving the franchise and changing things, like those are the first places to start.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about how the character looks. And I think that the fact that people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be putting disfigured, characters because it's bad representation," whatever, is silly because if the character is well written and well acted, then the scarring or whatever it is, the deformity, if you want to call it that, is it needs to be essential to that character's motivation. Like, the thing about I've forgotten her name and I just like Quantum of Solace's Bond woman. Camille, thank you. That she has scarring on her back and she tells, and she doesn't ever say, "Oh, look, by the way, that story I told you about how there was a fire in my house?"
You see her in a backless top.
Yeah, and you see that she has this
mark
mark
on her back. And then she tells the story about 40 minutes later or something like that.
Yeah, and then she says he left his mark.
Right.
And if you are an eagle-eyed viewer, you'll notice it the first time. If not, then the second time you watch the movie, which is when it fell for me, it dropped for me, I was like, oh, it's scarring, right? Because the first time I saw it, I was like, is that a tattoo? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So it's really and it also plays very heavily into the ending where she's going not like this, she's paralyzed. So if these things, these physical traumas become traumas, they become motivators or paralyzers for a character, then I don't think that anyone has anything to complain about. I think if they are just scarred for the sake of being scarred, like Blofeld is.
Yeah. That is, again, another callback that was really, really
not
unnecessary.
They could have left him exactly as he was.
Or they could have done what we're going to say later.
Put a pin in it.
Put a pin in it. Find a pin. Gotta find a pin. Gotta write it down.
Memento.
Yes. The Gideon Bible, which I read religiously. Okay, so...
So Safin is a very vanilla...
He's paper thin. He's not very well developed.
I don't like Rami Malek's performance. He seems very...
lethargic?
Like he's sleepwalking through it, yeah. Like, he sounds like he's on the verge of crying a lot. Like, Mr. Bond, like... And his
what was funny, actually? I was
weird.
Watching him in an interview, and more he starts to sound like Ted Levine to me.
Why?
I don't know. It's something to do with the word. I don't know what it is. Like I will.
I didn't mean my candy. I meant yours.
Yeah, I will play you a snippet of an interview, and you'll tell me what you think.
All right, fine. Send it to me.
If that's what you could, is that the only thing that you can see from now on?
But I find that he looks like with the. Sorry, I'm saying this with the bug eyes, right?
Yeah.
He does look
menacing
just when he's not saying anything, but it's as soon as he starts talking and his character's quote unquote motivations become clear, that I started losing interest in him as a villain. Like, I was so intrigued by him in the opening horror-ish sequence. Yeah. And then when he shows up in her house or in her office,
in her office, yeah.
I thought that they could have played that up. It would be amazing if there was for once a Bond villain who was like a horror character, like a horror villain, like an antagonist who preys upon the fears of the people who he's trying to intimidate. Right. You know, like he could have been hiding, you know, in her office, like behind a door or something, and you know, she opens the door and she finds this box on her desk and she opens it, and you know, like she sees the broken mask, and then like the door is like closed and he's standing behind it and he's got a fixed mask on his face. You know, like it could have been super creepy, and we wouldn't have had to have known what was put on her hands. We wouldn't have had to know anything about, you know, this is meant for Blofeld. You know, this nanotech that kills people.
The thing is, there's a lot of that kind of stuff in True Detective, which Cary Fukunaga also
a lot of what stuff?
Like that kind of horror stuff, that like that sort of Silence of the Lambs-y kind of real world,
which I really like, and I think that it would have had a great place in a Bond movie. I think it did have a good place in the beginning of the Bond movie. I think if they would have played into that and then only revealed his face, like you said, at the end, it could have been really interesting, just as and
not revealing him so much in the publicity.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think Rami Malek was cast because he was popular at the time. He won an Oscar. He was Freddie Mercury, etc.
Listen, Christoph Waltz was cast because of his popularity, but it doesn't. Yeah.
I'm saying that he wasn't cast because necessarily he's the best fit for the character. I think first of all, the character is supposed to be older. You know, talking about stalking Madeleine Swan as a child.
When she's a child, and he still looks like he's early 30s.
He looks like he's the same age as her.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't understand how exactly, you know, he was stalking her as a child. I don't know.
You're right.
Yeah, it didn't sit well for me, and I thought he needed to be more or less the same age as Bond to be a match for him. And I was very murky on his motivations for the main plot. I understood his connection to Madeleine Swan, obviously, but the main plot with the nanotech and what he was planning to do and why there was a ticking clock.
You mean the nanobolics?
Nanobolics. What he was planning to do and why he was planning to do it and all that kind of stuff. I don't understand. I understand him trying to, you know, get rid of Spectre and where that falls in. But none of that was made really clear. Maybe I'll pick something up on my second viewing. But yeah, none of that was particularly strong or threatening or, you know, necessary.
I didn't find him compelling at all.
He was not compelling.
So I just feel that all around, like the villains were.
Yeah, but I was also upset that he's the one that brought him down. I mean,
there's so much. I would put a pin in it.
Put a pin in it. No, but specifically that villain, who's probably one of the weakest of the series, let's face it.
Yeah.
He's the one that brought down the great James Bond. I mean, Moriarty is a foil for Sherlock Holmes.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, and you've got these sort of yin and yang, you know, stuff going on in literature and in movies, etc., and you understand that, like, you know, Batman is you know, is his arch enemy is the Joker. You know, specifically the Joker. It always comes back to the Joker. And Safin is not anywhere close to arch enemy. He's villain of the week.
Absolutely. He's villain of the week as well, WEA.
No.
Okay, see what I did there?
Look at you.
It's a little bit of wordplay. A little bit of wordplay for you there. Just throw that in there.
Very nice indeed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's move on from Safin because he's a little bit shit. I want to mention the Poison Garden just for a second because that was also kind of not really explained because you're looking at something biological and the virus is technical.
Yeah.
So it's very strange. But I enjoyed the iconography. I keep saying iconography, but I enjoyed the imagery.
That's what it is.
It is. I enjoy the imagery of that callback to You Only Live Twice, the novel.
Yeah.
And in that book, Blofeld goes under the assumed name of Shatterhand, and he's got this poison garden in a castle in a remote island, and all of that is just brilliant. It's the first hints of Fleming. Of actual Fleming material that's been used for quite a while, since Casino Royale, and I really enjoyed that was in there.
I also thought that was pretty cool. I liked the fact as soon as the island came up, I was like, oh, okay, and I did think it just feels that because the location is really cool. Also, like the sort of walkway that they're fighting on, is really cool.
And the big set with the pool and the worker bees.
The pool and the worker bees, and also the big staircase where the massive shootout happens. Yeah. Really cool.
Nice callback to Casino Royale.
Yeah, it's very, very well done. But again, it's all sitting on the shoulders of this villain and this plot that don't mix very well. They don't land.
If you don't lay the foundation properly, the roof's going to fall.
It's going to fall, exactly. And I do feel that if they would have made the villain compelling and they would have made what he's trying to do not nanobollocks, and if they would have...
But even if it was nanobollocks and there was some kind of reasoning behind it that went beyond the sort of sketchy kind of... we're going to, sell it to some buyers and whatever.
Even that wasn't really clearly telegraphed what he was doing.
Countdown. Like, why is it so important for him to close the blast doors? Couldn't he have, gotten off the island, nuke the fucking thing, get, kill everybody inside that needs to be killed, and then come back later, open the blast doors, and then, then maybe Safin wouldn't have shot him and scratched him with the vial.
There's a lot of what ifs here.
I think put a pin in it.
Put a pin in it one more time. But like I think I started it as well, which is what makes it so frustrating.
What you gonna do?
I don't know. I'm all bluster really. I feel that if they would have maybe made a threat that felt threatening, because when you say nanobots, you lose me immediately. Like we've already talked about this, and we've talked about how unrealistic it is, but it just didn't feel like a credible threat, and it didn't feel like something that Q couldn't maybe combat in a couple of years. And also the fact that they
mentioned the MP as well. He's got the MP in his watch,
and they drive home the idea that it's permanent. Yeah. Oh, what are you talking about, 007? The moment that nanotech gets into your bloodstream, that's it. It's done. It's there forever.
Didn't you know that,
you idiot? And it's like, all right, first of all, sorry. Right,
all right,
but all right, but like it just felt like just as soon as they said that line, as soon as Q says to him, well, didn't you know that you idiot, you twat.
It's Chekhov's gun; it has to be fired.
And I was like, okay, well, Bond's gonna die.
I was in denial.
I was not. I was just like, I know what they're gonna do.
And the other thing is when Madeline Swan is like riding away on the train, she's clutching her stomach. I clocked it, but at the same time I was in denial because there were rumors, circling around that Bond was going to have a kid, but I didn't want it to be true.
Another thing that they shouldn't have really done.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to talk about
the kid?
Just like the ramifications.
That was my segue.
Of
didn't
what
you get
that means. No, sorry. I didn't, sorry. What? Let's go back. Do it again. Say it again.
Bond have a kid.
What a wonderful segue!
Fantastic. Bond has a beautiful daughter named Mathilde, who
seems to be missing an A from the end of her name.
Yeah, there's a bit of play there that he goes to visit Madeline Swan and they make up and everything, and and then suddenly there's a kid appears at the top of the stairs, and she says, "It's not yours." And he's
yes,
like,
but what is her motivation for saying to him, "It's not yours"?
because she doesn't want him to run, I guess.
And also, nobody was buying that.
Of course, nobody was buying it. And then he said, "But what about the blue eyes?"
Nobody was buying it. He wasn't buying it. We weren't buying it. The audience wasn't buying it. No one was buying it.
Right. And then obviously Safin, for some reason, knows. So he's like, your daughter. And like, okay, well. And then at the end, that whole thing where she says, "She's got your eyes." And he says, "I know." And then I was waiting for Lily Potter to appear next to him.
So the reason that I have such a problem with the fact that Bond has a little girl, or more correctly, not the fact that she's a girl, just that he has a child.
Yes.
It does raise the stakes.
See, here you are again, pussyfooting around the sexist thing.
Yeah. No, it does raise the stakes, but first of all, the stakes can be raised in other ways.
But I'm saying it was a lazy way to raise the stakes.
Yeah, it felt like, well, I mean, he's not a family man. That's not his motivation.
Right.
That's not what pushes him. His motivation is to his duty, to his country, to what he perceives to be his morality and his code. You know, like there are motivators.
What was it that M says? He's a paragon of British fortitude.
Yeah. Well, that bit was all right.
Yeah.
And I think that.
She also said, "Take the bloody shot." So you know.
Do you think that they felt like that was the only way that he would sacrifice himself? I feel like every time he goes on one of these missions, he is sacrificing his life for his country, like that he is willing to make that sacrifice. I don't think that there is a single time when James Bond goes out with his gun and doesn't think there's a chance I'm not coming back. Right. He doesn't know he's a character in a movie. He knows he could die. So the idea that this is what's going to make him, finally, allow himself to not be. I felt it was a very lazy piece of writing, and the fact that the motivator for Bond, allowing himself to be destroyed by the missiles was, he calls a missile strike from he asks M and Q and all that lot, in England.
But what's the rush? Where's the countdown?
Right, and again, like he'd killed Safin. It wasn't like there was a launch that was going to happen. Like there was going to be, like some kind of dispersal of this nanobollocks to the rest of the world.
Right.
And
unless there is, and we missed it.
So that's what I want you to do. Is I want you to go and see the movie and tell me if I missed something. Right. But I don't think I did, and I haven't heard it spoken about in other discussions on the subject. But I feel that the idea that he can't see Madeline again and that he can't see his daughter now. Now listen, I understand that, I've heard it from the Bond Friends.
Yeah, Bond and Friends.
Podcast. And also a couple of other dissections that I saw online where they were saying, that I've completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I got distracted by trying to remember whether it was an and or not.
Right.
What was I saying? This complete
you were talking,
professionalism.
You were talking about
the
stakes. Bond's daughter.
It's gone. It's completely gone.
Okay then.
It's cut. Pause. Fuck it. I can't. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
So I'll tell you what it is.
It's gonna come back to me.
It'll come back to you. Okay, it'll come back to you. I think I really identified with Bond and his decisions. As soon as he found out he had a daughter, and when he was partnered up with Madeline, etc., etc., I understood all that because I'm a father. You're a father. And it made me feel for him in a certain way that I haven't before. The issue I have is that could be any other movie, and it shouldn't be Bond.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to see him with a kid. I don't want to see him.
I remembered what it was.
Okay, go for it.
Sorry.
Go for it. We're not cutting any of that, by the way.
Oh, really? You're leaving that in?
Oh, of course, because now you're coming back to it.
I feel really bad that I also just cut you off, and I just wasted everyone's time.
That's okay.
But basically, it's been talked about on the Bond and Friends podcast that Madeline Swan, eventually he would have touched enough people that the virus would be passed on to her and
Right.
she'd die eventually, and so he was trying to prevent that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that if we're talking
But
about
like
the
a
world
STD.
of 007,
Yeah.
that, Q would have found some kind of solution. They would have neutralized it in his blood. They would have kept him in a glass panel. Like, he could have, instead of blowing up the island, I want people with hazmat suits to come and pick me up and put me inside a glass box with holes in it so that I can breathe.
Yeah.
Or I can't touch anyone.
Like,
Bring
nobody-
me back. Put me in a sterilized room for a couple of years while you figure this out. Blow up that island once I'm gone, and then I'll be back in a couple of years' time to do my next movie.
Right. He didn't even have to hold something, like a lever or a button or
Yeah.
something like that.
Right, another thing. Like,
Yeah.
there was no reason for
was
him
no
to stay there
immediate threat.
other than the fact that he didn't want to live. It was kind of suicide.
They
It was like,
could,
I
yeah,
didn't
it was
want
absolutely
to live my
suicide.
life
Why is she
without
the
this
one
woman.
to,
Yeah.
that he wants to die for?
Not good enough. It's
No.
just not good
No,
enough
it's
a
not good
reason.
enough. It's not good enough. But also, no, I didn't hear anybody over the radio going, you know what? Hold on a sec. Bond's still on the island. We'll figure out a way to sort out his nanobot problem.
Yeah.
You might want to stop the launch. And there was time. He's like, no, you know what? Just blow me the fuck up.
And I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's like...
There are many, many narrative holes. I think also, like, I was really surprised to find out the real reason why Danny Boyle and John Hodge left. And it completely changed my opinion of that whole situation. I, like everybody else, was led to believe that Danny Boyle and John Hodge wanted to give Bond a daughter and then kill him off at the end. When really they left, I mean, from what I understand, they left because the writers wanted to kill Bond off and give him a daughter. So yeah, completely the opposite of what we were led to believe. As I said, nobody's talked about it yet. There are no spoilers yet, in terms of like the actual cast and crew. It would be very interesting to hear an interview with Danny Boyle on that subject.
I think that we're not going to... It's going to be...
He is going to talk about it at some point.
A little while before that happens. I think that we're going to have to wait. Because, how long was it after Die Another Day that Pierce Brosnan did that interview? Surfing.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's like, taking the absolute piss out of something that he promoted the hell out of.
Right.
And I just think that, the whole...
But Danny Boyle isn't
motivation was
connected.
silly.
He's probably signed some kind of, non-disclosure. But that might have a time limit on it.
Yeah.
Like sort of almost like an embargo.
I mean, I'd be interested to hear his take on it. I'd be interested to know what he...
what his script contained.
Yeah.
That's what.
But, it's the same thing as... there have been a few movies recently where people have gone, oh, well, if this person had been allowed to carry out their vision, then, then this would have happened. And, that's how the whole, Snyder Cut thing came about and,
Right.
All of that. And I'm sort of like, I'm one of those people who I enjoyed watching the Snyder Cut and I thought it was, very intriguing to watch.
I thought it was definitive. I thought it was the only way to
continue
what
he'd done.
The Man of Steel and Batman v Superman aren't the greatest of the DC movies, in my opinion, but that Justice League movie justifies their existence.
Yeah.
And I think it's it's also flawed, but it was a 3.5 hour movie that I breezed through.
Yeah, I didn't feel the time
Right.
on that either. But I'm just saying that like there's
that's
there's now this thing where we're waiting to hear what the director or the guy who was kicked off or the guy who wrote the original script and what that contained.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested to hear it, but it still doesn't change the fact that Daniel Craig's final outing ended with
Bond going out like a chump.
Yeah. He did. He went out like a chump. He goes and he stands on top of that building and he says, I know. And then, he gets blown up. And then there's a very melancholy kind of meeting of the MI6 people,
to James.
To James, and they have like a little snifter, whatever. And then there's the whole Matilda and Madeline like driving off into the sunset.
Let me tell you a story about a man
called
about your father whose name was Bond, James Bond. Like, I mean, the very definition of belabored in the dictionary should have that next to it.
I just like...
And then we have all the time in the world, which was like hammering the nail in the coffin for me.
I was so disappointed. I'm like now just like saying
we went
this,
out
like,
of there deflated. I think you went out of there pissed off more than anything else. And I was like, knocked for 6, I was like, what the fuck just happened?
I was so upset. I spent
really
the
whole of Friday in a bad mood.
Yeah, me too. Like, I came home and Shosh was like, how was the movie? And I said, it sucked. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yes, it was bad. It was really bad. I shouldn't have left the house, right? And she's like, didn't you enjoy going to see a movie with Johnny? I said, yes, very nice. And then the next day she's like, what's the matter with you? And I went, it was a bad movie. What don't you get? And she's like, it was a movie, Si. Why you get? And I said, you don't understand. And she's like, and I'm very dramatic. You don't
understand. You weren't there at the beginning.
That's what I said. I was like, you don't understand. You don't know what this means to us. And she's like, what happened? And I said, no, I don't want to spoil it for you. And she's like, I don't care. I'm not going to go see this film. I'm not interested.
Hey, my wife also said she doesn't care.
and I said, they killed him, Shush. They killed him like a chump, I tell you. And she was like, so? I was like, and she's like, it's just a movie. And I was like, you are wafer thin ice here, right? And it was just like one of those things. It also brought me back down to earth because I had been kind of like, oh, why, Lisa? Why? Like really upset about it. But then as soon as she sort of said to me, first of all, calm down.
Relax.
She said to me, just, it's not bad for them to try new things. And I basically then took it from a different angle. I was like, no, you're right. It's not bad that they try new things. I think if there would have been another way, perhaps a way that a pin has been put in something.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Right?
Put a pin in.
But if they had done it in a different way, it would have been more palatable. It was how they did it that I have a problem with.
Also, but I think, again, I'll say that I don't think Bond should ever die. However, the thing that bothered me a lot about that whole thing, we breezed past most of the movie here, but we might have to go back. The thing that bothered me most of all about that was, where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. And the more I think about it, the more I'm comfortable with it. In terms of, obviously The Dark Knight was its own thing and all that kind of stuff. It was open and closed. But again, I made the point that the things like the themes, the music and the iconography and the cast and everything was switched up for that, because Batman exists in a universe where there are many incarnations and there are lots of comics and different writers and etc. etc. In the same way as the Marvel universe, and there's so many different takes on these characters, but there is one Bond series, and the next incarnation, they're going to have to do a hard reboot if they want to carry on with the character of Bond. Without him, it's not Bond. It's a spin-off. So 100%. if they want to do that hard reboot, they can't go the same route as Batman Begins, because they've still got the tuxedo and the iconography and the music and etc. That Bond fans are going to be clamoring for, because Bond exists within all of that. You know what I mean? So it's not, even if it's a hard reset, it still has to be familiar. It still has to take place in the same universe that we've... Like, even when Casino Royale rebooted the Bond franchise, it still takes place in the same universe.
Exactly.
It's the same MI6 building. It's the same M. It's like there are certain things that they wanted to keep. It's the same Bond theme. They've still got the gun barrel. They've still got... You know what I mean? They've still got the personality traits of Bond. They've still got the DB5, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So while I abhor a lot of the nudge nudge wink wink references to the past, there are still certain things that have to stay, otherwise it's just a generic action movie.
You're right.
What makes XXX and not a Bond movie? It's a spy movie, it's got explosions, it's got a spy who's got chutzpah and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, he's not Bond, he's Vin Diesel playing XXX. It's a completely different thing. So that's what I've been thinking about, and I think that they'll recast the role, and maybe it's a good thing. We have a completely different incarnation next time around that they can push and pull in any direction, and
maybe this time they could plan out any supposed story arcs that they want to do. Yeah,
but the main point is the Bond fans will get the Bond that they go to the cinema to see.
Maybe they won't, Johnny. I see a lot of this happening now.
See, when you say my name, it's always something that I really don't want to bum you out, mate. But
No, listen, I hope that you're right.
Yeah.
But listen, we see a lot of things where the doth protesting too much that producers and directors and actors do. Like, for a prime example right now is the doth protesting too much that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are not appearing in the new Spider-Man movie.
Christoph Waltz isn't playing Blofeld,
right?
And Benedict Cumberbatch isn't playing Khan.
Exactly, it's all of that stuff, and I was going to bring up Khan as an example. And so when they say Bond won't be a woman, or when they say Bond will return, the reason that I'm so upset by this is because it leaves so many things up in the air.
Right.
And I'm used to the comfort of knowing that even though this may be a James Bond's last Bond film, a Bond actor's last Bond film, that there is more of what I like coming, with maybe some twists and turns here and there on what I'm used to. So this is just a very hard, like a very cold, ice cold bucket of water,
But that's what I'm saying. Once a new trailer comes out for a new Bond movie with an actor that when we see them for the first time, we go, wow, that looks cool. Like we did with Daniel Craig. It wasn't clear at all that Daniel Craig was going to be a good Bond. It really wasn't. Until that first trailer, and you see the black and white sequence, and you see him do his Yes Considerably, and then it bursts into color with the MGM logo, and then, you see him getting off the plane in Havana, I think. So there were certain things that I could see from that trailer that I knew we were in good hands. I think that once that first trailer for the next movie comes out, we might be able to swallow this one a lot more easily.
That's what I think as well. I think that with the perspective, with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of knowing where they're going with it, we will be less outraged by it.
Well, I think all Bond movies take a certain amount of stewing before they start to become flavorful for us. And I think for a lot of Bond
agree.
fans,
I think that Casino Royale, it placed itself very high up on my list of favorite Bond movies.
Yeah, there was that. That's an exception to the rule, though.
I also, with Quantum, I didn't have any problems with it when I came out of it. It's only when I had repeat viewings that I was like, hang on a minute, that doesn't really work.
But it's Skyfall and Spectre. I needed 2 viewings to really
I didn't
love them.
attach to Skyfall the first time I watched it. I couldn't understand why you liked it, and then I got it. And with Spectre, still don't like it. Can't get over it.
I mean, I do like Spectre, even with all of its flaws, but only up until the London sequence. And even in Blofeld's Lair, it starts to fall apart. I like the fact that there's more, Bond theme in there as well.
I like certain scenes in Spectre. I like the scene where he goes and confronts Mr. White. I feel like that's a really good, full of Bond moments.
As soon as Blofeld arrives, or they meet with him in that facility. It was like, okay, this is starting to fall apart. I think that also there's a real issue between calling back and continuity.
Yeah.
So Blofeld to us is a familiar name because we have grown up with the series and we know who Blofeld is. Bond in this incarnation doesn't have a clue.
It doesn't mean anything to him.
He comes to him and he says, "The man you are talking to right now. Why have you gone Mexican? No, he says, you're talking to Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Still Mexican. But I understand what you're saying. With his
and then you've got
accent,
that sort of like, Thomas Newman does like a kind of...
catchy name.
Yeah, catchy name. It's like Shrug. Okay, so that's your name.
It doesn't mean anything to
him. There's no reason. It's only because they got the rights and they were like, ooh, Tickle Pink. Let's use this. And that's the whole reason that Spectre was part of it. I wonder if they hadn't gotten the rights to Kevin McClory's stuff.
What would they have done?
How would that have looked? The next 3 films, or the next 2 films? Yeah. So basically, I hope they're gonna like hard reset and do something.
I really hope they're gonna hard reset.
Do something really, really cool. A lot of those callbacks and a lot of that sort of Bond's past and blah 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 just really didn't work for me and still doesn't. But at the same time, I was able to accept Skyfall and Spectre after a few viewings, whereas this one is going to take a few more than that.
I think it's going to take the next movie to make this easier.
Right.
To swallow.
Right. And there was there are a few franchises like that I notice, or a few series or whatever, that kind of thing happens. That you get the movie that you've got at the moment in the cinema and you go there and you come out really pissed off because that's the first Bond movie that you've gotten in 6 years or whatever. The next one comes along and it's just, the previous one becomes another in the series.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's fine.
I'm really interested to know what your second take
There are a
is
lot
on
of
it.
like weaknesses in it and a lot of like issues, but it's an entertaining movie and technically it's wonderful and it's like it looks gorgeous. I told you, like, the
color palette
London. I
is...
said to you, the London sequences in Spectre at the end, they switched for some inexplicable reason from 35mm to
all of
digital.
Spectre is very drab. Its colors, color correction.
But there's
is
a
very
difference.
sepia
There's a difference in texture. To the ending sequences. They suddenly started shooting on digital, maybe because they were shooting at night and they wanted higher visibility. I don't know, but those sequences look like something out of Spooks, like an ITV spy TV show. And to me that made it feel cheap. And there's nothing cheap about No Time to Die. It looks sumptuous and it's shot on IMAX on 65mm, and it's beautiful. And it's the same DP as La La Land. It's like it's got a lot of color, a lot of nice use of shadow and light, and etc. It reminds me a lot of Casino Royale, because Casino Royale also pops in the best way.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, indeed. I want to have a look and see if there are any other talking points. I want to talk a little bit about the score. I was on the fence when Hans Zimmer was announced.
Mm-hmm.
I was pleased that it wasn't Thomas Newman again. I think Thomas Newman only came along because of Sam Mendes, and he wasn't really suited to the job.
Yeah,
and he knew it. So I feel like a lot of Spectre and Skyfall's score is kind of aping The Dark Knight. So when Zimmer comes along and he's scoring the action scenes, it's got a very similar kind of flavor, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, he did embrace the Barry-ness of it a lot more. And there are a lot more Bond-themed moments that are, and callbacks obviously to On Her Majesty's Secret Service and We Have All the Time in the World, etc. But like there are some nice wah-wah trumpets in there.
He thread like a lot of
different styles,
motifs and stuff into a lot of different moments, which would have been, I think, more forgettable had he not done that. I think that he really deftly handled the sound. It's kind of like it's an imagined sound. It's a sound that you are expecting to hear when you go into a Bond movie, and it's exactly what you were talking about, because I didn't notice that in Casino Royale. They pepper the Bond theme, like just like a few like notes of the Bond theme, where it's just like here and there, and also how they've kind of Bondanized, if you will, the You Know My Name motif into a kind of Barry like.
But that's the thing. If you watch or listen to some of Barry's scores. A good 70% of those scores are based on the theme tune.
Yeah.
And then on the song, I mean, of that particular movie, and then he will like go into the Bond theme once in a while.
Yeah.
So it's not like what Arnold did in Tomorrow Never Dies, Well, There's Not Enough Die Another Day, where it's Bond theme almost wall to wall
all the time.
So I felt like Hans Zimmer's balance of that was a lot more serviceable and Barry-esque.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it a lot more than anything that Thomas Newman did.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have now come to the... we can take the pin out of it.
Let's take the damn pin out of it.
Right, here we go. We wanted to talk about our proposal in an alternate universe. Let's talk about the end of... what we would have done with the end of Spectre.
No. I'm talking about hinting at this even in Skyfall.
Okay. But you don't want to give too much away.
No. So
first of all, I wouldn't have had Christoph Waltz reveal that he's Blofeld.
This I want to go back to Moneypenny. This is what I mean by Skyfall.
Right.
I want to go back to Moneypenny because I feel like because she handles herself so well as protecting the ministers,
right,
that the reason that M has brought her on as his personal secretary is because she has those skills, and so she's like his last line of defense,
right?
And so she has like a a gun, under her dress or something, or under her desk.
Yeah.
And that would have been what I would have done in Skyfall, to have Mallory, to have put her in that position because he sees potential in her.
Right.
But then in Spectre,
we should disclose, by the way, that this is there was something written about this originally. This is not entirely original, but the way we're talking about it.
This is proposed from
Ralph
an
Fiennes
amalgamation.
Like it was offered, it was proposed that Ralph Fiennes' Mallory would wind up being the villain, and he refused. He didn't want to do that. He's played too many villains. He wanted to be straight M.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this isn't an original idea, but how they would have done it was to me, it was interesting, was the idea of, Blofeld, revealing himself as Blofeld, the head of Spectre. And I think if we would have had that name dropped in Skyfall, then the connection that they make in Spectre to Silver might have felt a little bit more organic.
That whole thing of the device that they used in Silence of the Lambs, that they talked a lot about Hannibal Lecter before you ever see him.
Yeah.
So that there's some kind of fear built up. And I feel that Christoph Waltz, if they would have used that those like sort of keys of like the cat and the shirt that he wears, the collarless shirt and whatever, but that he never said, "My name is Blofeld." Okay, so the viewer would think that that's what they're looking at, and his name's Franz Oberhauser. The same thing they did with Agent Fields.
Yeah.
They never said her name's Strawberry Fields. It's in the credits, right?
Right.
But it's hinted at, and those who know, and those who don't, right?
Right.
So it would have been great if, if he would have just been Franz Oberhauser, but you suspect that he might be Blofeld because of the cat and the blah, blah, blah.
I actually, in my WhatsApp message to you when I was telling you about this, I actually said it's fine that they reveal him as Blofeld, but it's only fine that they reveal him as Blofeld when it's understood that there is a big player in Skyfall, that it's understood that there is a big player, even if it was seen for a split second on one of Silver's computer screens, right?
Because I feel like Franz Oberhauser was just a random bloke, and having M be revealed as the head of Spectre, that he's in the place to orchestrate things.
But he's maneuvered himself there. Right. That's the thing. Is that
Silver is working for him, and it would have been much more believable.
Exactly. In Skyfall,
find somebody with a vendetta and squeeze it.
Exactly. I need to remove M, and I know everything, so I know that he is her dirty little secret. So I'm going to give him the agency. I'm going to maneuver him into this place. Now, this whole thing is very interesting, but it would have required them to actually give a shit about planning.
Yeah,
but indeed. I think that it would have been really interesting if we would have had, some hints here and there about a name of Blofeld, and then if Franz Oberhauser would have said, "My name is Stavro Blofeld," we're like, so this is the mysterious name that we heard in the last movie, and when he's taken in, and he's taken down really easily as well, like at the end of the movie, and he's taken in, and Bond walks away with Madeleine Swan, and whatever, it would have been really interesting if there would have been something where... So there's a book series. Jon Nesbo writes the Harry Hole series. And there is a...
Say it again.
Harry Hole? Okay. I don't know if I'm saying it wrong. I don't know.
Right.
Harry Hole.
Right.
But there's a really interesting thing where there is a supposed... They've mentioned it in, I think the first or the second book, where there is a gun smuggler in Oslo, and they just don't know who it is. He's like the Moriarty of this whole operation. It's an underground gun trade, and it's hinted at, and it's not really pushed forward. And then what happens is that to the viewer, to the reader of the book, in the third book, it is revealed to them through a secondary character who is then murdered by this person, who the smuggler is, and it happens to be someone on the police force, right? And for, I think, 2 books after that, we are aware of who this person is.
Right.
And it's almost like you're going, don't trust him, Harry, you know. But like, you know, and then when it's finally revealed to Harry, it becomes a real point of revenge and contention and rivalry and almost, how did I not see this coming? But to reveal something like that to the audience is extremely powerful.
The end of Spectre. Let's talk about the end of Spectre.
That's it. The end of Spectre would have been, you know, everybody back to work. Bond may have left the service, but everybody back to work. Moneypenny, you get back to work. She's still the last line of defense for, you know, M. And, you know, he sees, you know, Franz Oberhauser / Blofeld is, you know, on his computer. He sees him in one of the cameras. He's being, you know, put in that little glass box. And, you know, he sits down at the desk and there's like a moment and then he presses a button on his computer and the Spectre interface comes up.
Right.
And we don't say that his name is Blofeld and we don't say anything about that, but we realize that the person who has been revealed as Blofeld may not actually be the head of Spectre,
right,
or Blofeld indeed. And then that opens up No Time to Die of us knowing that he is not who he says he is.
And it's cat and mouse.
It's cat and mouse, and it also works well with the whole, well, M, why have you created this nanotech virus thing?
Right, exactly. And Bond gives him a real bollocking in that scene.
And that scene would have had a lot more gravitas if we would... And then going back to the whole Moneypenny agency thing, her having agency and being, you know, useful would have been really interesting if, you know, actually all along Bond kind of suspects foul play and that he sends her into the office. He says, I want you to, you know,
or that she sees something.
Or she sees something.
And there's like a kind of
a confrontation
Vulture,
between
Peter
the two
Parker
of them. Yeah,
style
we were
scene.
talking. I brought a different example. You brought the scene where Vulture is talking to Peter in the back of the car, but I was talking about Hans Landa and Shoshana in the cafe.
Oh, yeah.
And how,
that's
you know, it's kind of not clear. Does he know who she is? Oh, he definitely knows who she is. Or maybe she doesn't. It's also done in American Psycho, where it's, you know, they told Willem Dafoe to play it 2 ways. Play it as if you're friendly and play it as if you suspect him. Right. And so that would have been super hard. And then if at the end we wouldn't have had Safin, that the bad guy would have been Mallory, who really doesn't need to be called Blofeld.
Right.
Blofeld is a code name for his
head of
decoy.
Spectre.
For his decoy.
Right.
Right. The MacGuffin for other agents to chase after. If they ever find out that there's a head of an organization called Spectre, they get high up enough, they'll
kind
think
of like
that
a
it stops there.
Spartacus situation.
Exactly, they'll think it stops there, but that the Blofeld can be arrested. He can be fallible. He can be taken down. But the real head of Spectre is in one of the highest branches of the government, and he has his finger on the pussy trigger.
Right.
You know, so like it would be really, really interesting to see that, and then to have Bond actually go out in the book of You Only Live Twice.
You Only Live Twice.
Sorry, my brain. In the book of You Only Live Twice, there's a duel to the death between the two of them, and they are both very injured, and then Bond gets the upper hand and very brutally chokes the life out of him in revenge of, you know, out of revenge of what he does to Tracy. He could have killed Moneypenny in that confrontation, or you think she's gotten away with it, and then later on, you know, she's killed, or her car explodes, or whatever.
It would have been a much more thoughtful and ingenious way of deconstructing everything.
Yeah, and the stakes would have been high.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he understands that Queen and country are on the line, and that the head of Spectre is not taken down, and that he's actually at the highest branch of government, and he is in charge of all of these secrets, and that's how he's able to maneuver his terrorist plans all over the place. And he maneuvered himself into this place of government, and that he'd been planning it with, you know
what a really cool big reveal would have been is if not, you're obviously talking about revealing him as the head of Spectre, but it would have been really cool if the scene with Max Denby, C, that he would have said, now we know what C stands for, careless, and he shoots him in the head. That would have been a nice, like, kind of Max von Sydow kind of thing from Minority Report.
Would have been brilliant.
The precogs.
No, but I think it would have been really interesting if he shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
And it's not sort of revealed there that he's the head of Spectre, but that, you know,
that was a punishment.
It would be a kind of. it would be a kind of a shake-up of your senses that you as a M doesn't
why did he
normally shoot
why did he
people.
kill
What the
him
hell?
in such cold blood?
Like,
but
well,
it would
that's
be
not
that
his
kind of thing of like the modern equivalent of him pressing a button and the
Yeah.
the Spectre operative getting like burnt alive or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it would have been a good one. I wish Ralph Fiennes would have gone with it.
Yeah, and I also think that that if they would have had Bond go out like that, fighting his this man who he believed
basically his Moriarty.
Yeah, he believed that he was his
his boss,
mentor, his boss, the person who's taken over from his mother figure, who in some ways maybe has taken over as a father figure, maybe maybe not, maybe they see each other more as just colleagues and respective whatever, a mutual respect. But then to find out that was all a lie, and then to realize that maybe Blofeld's plan is really to just destabilize the British government or something. I don't know, whatever it is.
No, he wants to rule the world and everything.
Exactly.
All that stuff.
He wants to be the man on top, right? Which is, look, at the end of the day, a very generic motivation.
Of course,
but like, why has he been maneuvering?
At least Safin should have had that,
right? But like, why has he been? There was never a reasoning for, like, Franz Oberhauser's "It's me, James, the author of all your pain," right? And that he's like, why? Because I beat you at poker, or your dad liked me a little bit. Like, what's wrong with you, right? So if it could have been, that even at the very beginning when he became a 00, Mallory saw an opportunity. He's like, I see that he's really connected to M,
right?
And he is the way in.
Right.
So to screw with him and destroy his love and to make him angry and to to constantly be maneuvering Bond into these situations where all he's doing is losing things and losing people, and
because he sent him on his missions. Yeah, right.
And then he's sending him on these missions and posing as a friend, and he gets injured in the Silver fight, and all that, because Silver doesn't know that he's the head of Spectre. Nobody does. Right. That's the whole point. They all think that it's Franz Oberhauser.
Right.
And so it would have been just genius. And then to have Bond be injured in the fight, but in order to take him, mortally wounded, in order to take this guy down and strangle him to death or kill him in a violent way or whatever, and then bleed out because help is really far away and whatever it was, would have, I think, just been really compelling.
This is what we got.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about this movie?
I'm glad that we got a Bond movie. I think that I would rather have a Bond movie that makes me really, really annoyed and that makes me think of all these different things and that allows me to have a 4.5-hour conversation.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's good that people are talking about it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be talking about it if you hated the franchise. If you weren't in love with it, I think that there are certain films that that you watch and you come back and you go, well, that was shit, and then you forget about it the next day. This has been on my mind. It's Monday today.
Me too.
We saw it on Thursday night, and it's still I'm still thinking about it.
It's sparked my desire to watch the other Bond movies now. I want to watch From Russia with Love again. I want to go through them all, and I know that that's a daunting task for a parent who doesn't sleep, but I think that it's I love this series, and every time, here's the thing, is that in the lead up to a Bond movie, you go nuts.
I go absolutely nuts. There is nothing else. And this happened to me twice. And in 2020, I went nuts. And then they delayed it,
and then you
got
annoyed.
I swore off Bond. I didn't want to watch any Bond movies. I didn't want to look at any of the trailers or anything like that because I didn't know how many more times they were going to delay it.
Yeah, this will nicely tie into what we were talking about with context and childhood. Is that I usually go, we'll go see it together, and I play it off like I'm not interested, and I say to you, oh God, you're obsessed, and then you'll be like, and you are too, and then and you'll get me there, like we'll get to a point where suddenly, like it's a week before, and then I'm starting to go a little crazy. I'm starting to go, and I'm watching all of the Bond trailers before, and
all the shit that I'm sending you,
and all the shit, and I'm like listening to podcasts that you're sending me, and like I'm getting really interested in. And I think that goes back to when we were a kid. When we were kids.
we were a kid.
Yeah. Words. When we were kids, that you used to be the firing up motivator behind what made me love Bond so much. So I think that A, it's really fun to go and see Bond movies with you. B, it's really fun to talk about it. And C, we know what C stands for. Cunt.
Cunt. Yeah. All right.
Great way to
And
end
on
it.
that note...
Thank you very, very much for listening. We know that this was very long, but we think that there was a lot to unpack, and I think we unpacked it quite well.
Yeah, and we probably missed out some stuff, but if you made it to this point, you're probably really, really tired, so good night.
If you have thoughts on what films you would like us to watch, there will be some kind of contact information on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on, and feel free to contact us and let us know what you think.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
What's our seat number?